fired. Should they have been fired? I don't know. Let's talk about it. That's what we're here to do.
My ick is when you ask me how much the baby weighs and it's still in your hands. Dad comes outside and asks for a paternity test right outside the room door.
Saying you don't want any pain medicine, no epidural, but you are at an 8 out of 10 pain with just a Cervidil, and you're still closed, fingertip.
When we've already told you to push the call light, but every 5 minutes, your family member coming at the front desk asking for something else.
Excuse me, can I have a blanket?
Another ick, when you're going room to room between one baby mama and your other baby mama.
Oh, no.
Ick.
Hey, ladies, how are you ladies doing? Good to see y'all. All right, everyone looking nice and refreshed. Like the start of the year look. I'm so excited to have y'all on the virtual couch. We're saying, what's up, Dr. Trissa? It is so good to see you. Welcome back. Start of the year. We wrapped up last year beautifully. Nice to see you. And we are welcome back. We had to get her out of the books, y'all, because she's trying to get her doctorate and stuff. I know, right? What's up, Olivia? The midwife extraordinaire is back on the couch. We had to grab her for this one, y'all. We had to tell her, please come out the books for a quick second because we need your opinion on this topic. All right. Welcome back, Olivia. How are you doing?
So well. Thank you for having me back. I missed you.
Awesome. We are loving the look. Did I say we're loving the look? And we're so excited for the first time on the virtual couch. Amanda Wynn, we are so excited to have you here. Hey, Amanda, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm very well. We're excited to see you go forth in the future of obstetrics. That's my hope. That's my hope. That's my bias, but it is also my hope. So we're excited to have your voice on this couch this evening. So let's just jump right into it. Okay. So you guys saw the video. I'm sure half the world saw the video by now. Very controversial video. Let's start with this. Did you ladies know that this was even a trend? Because that was the first shock to me.
Nope.
To be completely honest, I didn't. Yeah.
A trend as in you're describing the icks of your profession or like what?
Like a social media trend, right? That it was trending
so
on social
apparently
media?
This was a big, I'm clearly not on the tickety talk, but this is a big trend on TikTok that people are sharing their gripes about their profession. And so this apparently was not that unusual, very unusual to me, because I was not even aware about this being a trend. So what do you ladies think? Because I think one of the topics that came up before we get into the depth of the matter was the fact that some people were saying that doctors, nurses shouldn't have gripes about being a doctor or nurse. So that was part of the controversy, was that people were saying this is not a trend. Doctors and nurses shouldn't be doing trends. So I think there's a two-part discussion. One, should we have gripes, and should we have the ability to say when we have issues with our profession?
Yes, I'm gonna jump on that one. I am a human being. Don't play me. I'm allowed to have my feelings, whether good or bad. I, as a professional, have to determine how I express my feelings, whether good or bad. But I'm allowed to have my gripes. I'm allowed to be upset. I'm allowed to not like things. I'm allowed to really dislike it. I'm allowed to hate it. Yes, we are allowed. We are human beings. I'm not a doctor or a nurse, technically. I am still a human being as a
You
clinician.
are a doctor of physical medicine. Physical therapy.
Physical therapy.
I keep trying to change your profession. You know this.
PM&R for me.
This is an ongoing joke on HBC.
No PM&R.
Maybe it's prophetic.
No. Like, you're worse than my dad.
You are doing a Michelle Obama. No, I am not trying to be president. She's like, absolutely no. But what do you think about the thought that, some people are saying in the healthcare profession that because of what we do, that our commitment to our jobs is unique, and that being so, we should not be having these conversations about our jobs?
Okay, so after the pandemic, I think nurses have always really been stretched, right? Nursing is the largest profession in the United States. and physicians and nurses carry a special burden, especially in these last 2 years. The systems have really failed. You know, the medical system leaves a lot to be desired in the United States. So we don't give appropriate places for people to vent and share, things like this happen, right? I think for me personally, what was upsetting is I think sometimes as professionals, when we're burnt out, when we're tired, when we're exhausted, when we feel taken advantage of and not seen, we forget, I think, with the monotony of you doing something a million times every day, that people that you take care of, that's not their experience. This is their singular, unique experience. So sometimes we can lose a little bit of just our understanding and our patience and our humanity in that. And that's kind of what I heard from there. I saw, you know, women who are probably doing their job and try to do their best and who are tired and overworked and maybe were a little bit insensitive, you know? And it was not the appropriate place to do that, but it's systems that break down. And I feel like that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the fallout of really abuse for the healthcare professionals.
That's a very interesting point, and I'm going to put a pin on that because it also reminds me that I don't know if the strike is still going on today, but this week there was a nurse strike in New York. And they were pretty much echoing what you're saying, Olivia, in the sense that they're burnt out and the systems have heard their complaints and have not responded to their complaints, but continue to give them a high ratio of patient to nurse or a high patient to nurse ratio, which is leading them to feel burnt out, even those who are veterans in the field. So I agree. I think they're, in general, we tend to be burnt out because the systems have been mishandling us for a very long time as healthcare professionals, whether it's the productivity for the clinicians or whether it's the ratio of patient to nurse in the hospital system. But I think you're right in the sense that the pandemic sort of added another layer to that. And let's talk about the fact that a lot of people left the profession. Combination of anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder from the pandemic. So for those of us who are left behind, we're still dealing with those effects of the pandemic, in addition to just the everyday demands of the profession. So what are your thoughts, Amanda?
I mean, kind of piggybacking on what the other ladies have mentioned, I definitely agree that kind of like being a baby doctor right now, coming in fresh with fresh set of eyes, I do feel like when I look at other healthcare professionals that have been in the profession for years, are a little bit more jaded when it comes to the profession for sure. And I mean, it goes to show like through all their experience, I'm not discrediting like their feelings or anything, but I do think it takes a toll on their emotions towards the field. So, but again, I don't think it was a good place to vent that feeling. You know, we're all human, like Trista was saying, like we all have our opinions and it's okay to like feel the way you feel, but I don't think it should have been on an online platform for millions to see. And I do think it creates like a distrust in the healthcare system too, with patients to healthcare professionals.
Now, that's an interesting point, too, because you raise a really good point about the relationship between patient and nurse. And so part of the controversy is not just that they shared their gripes about the profession, but the comments were specifically targeting patients and patients' complaint. Whether it was satire or not, I think that rubbed people the wrong way, especially the fact that we can't overlook that these nurses are in Atlanta. Atlanta has a high percentage of African American women. We cannot overlook the fact that there is a current distrust in the healthcare profession, specifically in women's health, due to the mistreatment of Black women and the high mortality rate as a result of that. So I think that this issue has compounded the fact that there's an underlying distrust to begin with. Chances are the population of patients that they were referring to, I don't know who the specific patients were, but the assumption or the public assumption was these were probably women of color. And then to have other women of color say certain comments and seem so callous towards other women of color in the context of trying to rebuild the relationship may have made this even more, I guess, salt on the wound. What do y'all think about that part?
I mean, go ahead, Amanda.
No, go ahead.
You raised your hand. Go ahead.
I definitely saw in one of the comments, and I mean, I'm not a Black woman myself, but I saw in one of the comments that a Black woman made stating that she feels it was kind of like hypocritical that Black women encourage other women to, you know, advocate for themselves or to ask questions, encourage them to ask questions. But yet, these Black women that were nurses were also doing the complete opposite, saying like discouraging them from asking questions and like telling their community, no, don't ask questions. It's an ick for me, which is like that distrust, right? That we're talking about, the hypocrisy that they don't like. It's like, how can you say one thing, but then you're doing a complete opposite for your community?
That's
Yeah,
a
I mean,
great point.
yeah, because I mean, it really goes back to, well, do we want to empower women or don't we? I mean, again, I feel like it's so common on labor and delivery units because we see things so much, we lose the sensitivity sometimes. So I really saw that these people, you know, these nurses are probably over it. And I thought that sounds terrible because labor and delivery is supposed to be your most intimate, right? Some of the most important experiences of your life. And we're fighting this battle right now of where are Black women safe to give birth? Right. And so if you want to make this case that it's beautiful to do it outside of the hospital if it's appropriate, but it's also beautiful to do it inside of the hospital if it's appropriate and you're safe, well, then how can we create this environment of safety and trust when you feel like behind your back, people are annoyed with you, right? Because that's how you feel anyway. You feel like, I don't trust them. They say this, but as soon as I give my opinion, as soon as I ask questions, you belittle me, right? So what is that saying about the system that's creating this? And how can we change it so that our healthcare professionals are more supportive of each other, the process, and their patients? Because I'm pretty sure none of these nurses got into this to be jerks, right? Nobody got into this type of attitude to be like, and I hate this and I hate that. So what does that say about our system, right? What does it say about where these nurses are working, the environment that they're working in, that your compassion doesn't come out when you see somebody hurting, when you see somebody in pain? Does that mean that, you know, we don't get valued in our jobs? Does it mean we don't get paid enough? Does it mean that we're just burnt out? So I really like see both sides of it, and it's kind of brutal all the way around.
Ooh, y'all are stepping on some toes. Okay. Because realistically, a lot of people don't want to hear that. And that is the truth of the truth of the truth. What Olivia said is 100% true, right? So the system, we would talk about safety for women to deliver, but how could you feel safe if the professionals in the system don't feel safe either? Right. So we can't create a safe system if we were ourselves don't feel like we're safe in the system to begin with. And so the end result, even though they're taking the brunt of it, we really should dig deeper and figure out, how did these nurses get this way? Are they overworked? Are they burnt out? Because one of the symptoms of being burnt out is what? Exactly what they did, being oh, we're assuming that they're being callous. That's the other point of it. Could this have been a very distasteful satire? That's the other possibility that people have not drawn a conclusion about. What if this was truly just satire? What if they don't mean anything that they said, but they were going with this trend, which is not wise? And I'm not excusing it, but what if it was satire? Not smart, not strategic, huh?
But how can you do satire about other people's lives in that way? Like the healthcare system is supposed to be sacred, right? It's supposed to be, you can't like take my words in my, you know, worst moment, right? In my saddest moment when I'm supposed to be trusting you with my healthcare and my baby's life and my life. And you're over here making fun of me about it. That's not.
And that's the question. And that leads us back to where we started, which is, are there exemptions? So you're basically saying that the healthcare system and the healthcare professionals are exempt from, because we see satire across the board. Lawyers have satire, actors have satire about their professions. You have satire in the professional world. So there are other industries that do satire. This is why this was trending, because the trend was basically to talk about your icks, whether satire or not, with your profession. So now we're saying that the exemption, it should be the healthcare system. Is that what we're saying?
Okay.
Healthcare should...
One last thing, and I promise I'm gonna let y'all talk.
No,
I
no,
would
it's
say
okay.
yes. I would say yes if it were in an environment that was already healed. Our women's health system is so precarious. Women are dying at such alarming rates, and so are their babies, that we're not really at a place where if we don't even have trust within our own healthcare system of the people who are supposed to be taking care of us, we're not at a place where we can laugh about it yet because we don't even know if we're safe, right? So
yeah. And this is where a comedian would say, too soon? It was too soon, huh?
yes.
Yeah. It was too soon. What were your thoughts, Bree, when you saw as a mom who also shared about your personal childbirth trauma? And thank you for that episode where you shared your just incredible history, and just really mind-blowing journey. And if you haven't seen Bree's testimony, go back and watch it from last year. What was your thought when you saw this?
It was upsetting because, like she said, it's, first of all, when you are giving birth, it's you're scared. It's some, like my experience, it didn't go as expected. And to hear, and when you have questions about anything, you expect to be heard. And to ask these specific questions about, like, is it time yet, or is this okay? You're concerned because a lot of, like she said, a lot of women die giving birth. A lot of people don't make it. So for them to make light of them wanting to ask these questions and are answering their concerns, and it was sad to see, and it was really sad to see it was women of color.
Yeah. How much damage has this done?
I think it's done a lot of damage. I think that the trust is already broken in hospitals. That's why a lot of women are now doing home births, because there is not a lot of trust in the hospitals. I remember my specific experience in having concerns, and as I remember one experience when they were trying to get me to walk after a C-section. And I was telling her, I'm in a lot of pain. I don't think that I do. She said, you got to get up and walk. And I was like, okay, hold on. I'm in a lot of pain. And then she said, ma'am, you're not in a lot of pain because we gave you pain medicine. And I said, well, I don't know what you gave me, but I'm in pain and I am telling you that I cannot do it. And then the lady said, oh, you haven't given her medicine yet. She walked in and she said, oh, so I think it's a problem that, I think a lot of, patients were not being heard, and to see them make light of that. And you don't know what these women experiences were, like, you don't know what they were told, before they gave birth. You might make it, you might not. You might have to sign, like what I told you, like you'll have to sign, where would you want your kids to go if something were to happen to you. You don't know their mindset. So to see or someone make light of that, it was just terrible to see that.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point, because when we talk about trauma-informed care, one of the things that we are oftentimes mindful of is, what is the journey of the woman by the time she sees you, right? And
right.
So as you shared in your particular experience also, is that your negative experience with the healthcare system started from day one, from even finding out that you were pregnant. So by the time that mom has journeyed through her pregnancy, she's probably endured a few negative experiences to begin with, may have been scared. I would definitely say what I'm trying so hard to share with my profession, because I think we're still kind of in this bubble, is the fact that Black women in particular are terrified of pregnancy. After hearing, and we talked about this briefly last year, after hearing the statistics without a systematic process of correcting the statistics, it's left Black women traumatized. And so to even be pregnant, or to even consider being pregnant, is a very traumatic experience to begin with. So to your point, being sensitive to that you're likely dealing with someone who's in front of you who is already traumatized. And now to see that, and apparently this was, so to put context to the conversation, now I will share that these are there had been complaints. I don't know about which nurse, but there had been previous complaints about the nurses on labor and delivery in that particular hospital before. And so there were women of color in the comments who were saying, I'm not surprised. We've complained about them before. So then let's talk about the system so the end result of what we saw is a system that failed, to Olivia's point, failed on multiple levels, right? The system then turned around and fired the nurses, but the system is who failed.
Yeah.
Failed the nurses and failed the patients.
Right.
So should they have been fired? I asked you ladies that question.
I don't think they should have been fired. I think maybe they could have taken some sensitivity courses or something. I mean, just to think about what nurses have to deal with on a day to day. I know that a lot of nurses are overworked right now. They have to see tons of patients. And so I don't know if I don't know, because in one end you say, okay, maybe they should be fired because I don't want that kind of nurse working on me, right? But on the other hand, I'm looking at, what their experience is, their workday experience is like. What do they have to deal with on a day? Why are they not as sensitive as they should be to these things? What could have made those nurses better nurses? So I don't know if firing was the best thing, or maybe it was. I don't know.
I think
I agree. Go ahead, Trisha.
I think about the fact that if the complaints are coming across about these nurses, and maybe complaints are coming across as a whole, or maybe complaints are coming across just on particular nurses. If these are some of the nurses that are now making this kind of video, probably a good idea to no longer have them on staff. You already have a bit of that evidence of them not providing quality care. But then, yes, you kind of have to look at the system to see, well, what is stopping them from providing quality care? Like, how are we going to address this? Because thinking about it now, and now that they've been fired, there's now even more of a shortage. So if it's 6 nurses that got fired, you now have to find at least 6 nurses to cover those shifts, or else it becomes more strain on the rest of the staff. So it just becomes almost like a worsening of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's because, okay, you fire them, so what? They're going to be more resentful, right? Nurses are already scared. You're having more criminal litigious cases against them. Nurses take the fall a lot. And let's be clear, there are some nurses who are not good, right? Like we said, there are some people who need to move on. But I would really be interested to know more about their backgrounds and really if there was anything that was working. Because, there's a way to look at systems issues as like root cause, what's the problem, let's get rid of this. There's another really effective way of looking at things and saying what is working within our system and how can we reproduce that? How can we make that go across the board? How can we make this better for everybody? And, I mean, the medical profession has not been great for women's health. It's very paternalistic, right? It's very much like I know and you don't. And even those of us who are well-meaning, even those of us who are raging against the machine, it's this thing. It's like this give and push, this push, give and take, push and pull. Sometimes patients treat us badly, right? So there's a lot to unpack there. What if they had a terrible day and it's been like, what if the patients were abusive? So it's a very much, our culture right now is very much like you're bad, you're terrible, and that's it. That's very rarely the case. I really feel like I have to stand up for birthing people and I have to stand up for nurses. Like it's very rarely the case. And most of us are not out here trying to harm anybody. Doesn't mean we don't. And what the fallout of that, may be that we have to deal with those consequences.
Right. And there's such great points, ladies. And I like that comment about good people have bad days too. And but for the grace, if anybody followed us 24/7, 7 days a week, at some point you're going to catch a not so great light. And I consider us all to be good people. So it's really hard. And to your point, to both of your points, actually, then what happens to the system? So the nurses get fired, but what happens with the system? Who holds the system accountable?
Right.
And that's where we are. And it's really hard because, I think a lot of it is education too. The public believes that doctors and nurses are the decision makers when it comes to how things are done. And so because we're the faces that the public sees, when a patient is upset that something isn't done quick enough or you didn't see me long enough, the complaint is usually against the face that they see. when we all know that there are deficiencies in the system. The system is highly demanding of clinicians and nurses and just healthcare workers altogether. I'm not excluding the medical assistants, the respiratory therapists, all the therapy therapists, the mental health therapists. It's grueling. And our healthcare system is broken. And this is not the cause of it. This type of behavior is not the cause. It is the result of a broken healthcare system. And so there's a much bigger problem. The other controversy that came up is the fact that apparently there were other nurses who were not people of color, or did not include a video with people of color, who were not fired, or the plot thickens, y'all. So the other twist, because I'm just going to twist this story in all different ways. The other controversy that came up is the fact that this is not the same result of other nurses who did very similar things. So is there also disparity in how people of color are dealt with when things like this happens?
I wish I could keep the eyebrow up high enough. Is that really a question?
I'll raise mine for you. I'll raise mine for you. What do y'all think about that? The disparity in how this is dealt with? Is that shocking? Or do you think that this is going to become the example of how others may now also be fired, or also be have corrective action because of what happened? And why is it usually us that have to be the starter of outcomes like that?
I don't know. Like in the TikTok video, I remember seeing like the patients that went to the hospital. They they made videos being upset about it. So I don't know if it was because of the outrage of the videos that the patients made about the specific nurses, and maybe there wasn't as much outrage with the white nurses, like their patients might have not spoken out. I don't know. I do remember though seeing the patients with the black nurses. They spoke out and said, I remember you, I know you're talking about me. So maybe that has something to do with it,
that they were specific complaints, and then it sort of opened,
and those complaints went viral. So it wasn't just something that they just called the hospital and made a complaint. Those complaints went viral about those specific nurses.
Are we okay, I'm gonna let y'all handle that topic. What do you think of that part? I know what I want to say.
Just so messy. It's just so messy.
It is
messy.
It is very messy. It is very messy. Are we more hurt by each other? Do you think that that's playing a role in it? Are we more critical of each other?
Yes, I think so.
I think so.
Yeah, very much
so. What do you think,
so.
Amanda?
You know how I was mentioning that comment before that I read about the Black woman saying that you're being a hypocrite for trying to encourage our community, but you are the one discouraging. So I do think we're more harsh on like people of our own color because we expect a higher standard. I guess it is a double standard, but if you see someone that's encouraging you that looks like you to do something, but they're doing some complete opposite, then you're going to be more critical of that person, right?
It's just such a strange sense of betrayal. It's like, I think everybody wants accountability, and we don't know how to do that without, making somebody the bad guy. Like, how can you hold these nurses accountable, whether they're Black, white, Asian? And then it really feels strangely terrible that they look like you, right? It's like, dang, you're not even my ally. Nobody's my ally. Like,
Yeah, and it leads us to another conversation we're having coming up soon. So make sure you watch it, because then it becomes, when we talk about repairing the broken relationship, and I think it does go both ways. I think it's possible that these nurses were harder on their own, just because we have unhealthy barriers when it comes to people who look like us. And so we treat you like your family instead of treating you like you've hired me to take care of you. Which is what should have been done, is when you take care of patients, you need to have the mindset of, you were hired to take care of me, right? But oftentimes, sometimes that barrier gets broken and people get a little bit too comfortable with your kind and may not necessarily deal with each other in the professional way that we ought to. So I think that could have been a factor in it, as well as all the other things we talked about. But when we move forward to try to move forward about repairing these relationships, so how do we help? First of all, if Black women don't trust Black women in the profession, there is no way we're going to repair this relationship. And I use the word repair loosely because the honest of truth is, and I was trying not to swear, the honest of the truth is that that the relationship was never trustworthy, right? We started from a very untrustworthy relationship and it has evolved over the years and we're still trying to find a place of trust. But there's never been trust between people of color altogether and the healthcare system. So how do we create a relationship of trust if the foundation is so broken, that it's so broken that we're seeing evidence of it even to this day in 2020, now 2023? Yeah, so how do we, the relationship is so broken. How do we repair this broken? How do we fix or even approach it? Because I would like to say, put us in the front of the conversation, but this was us.
Well, maybe by just acknowledging that that needs to happen. I very rarely hear conversations. Okay, so I watched this movie and The Woman King. I loved it and I thought it touched on so many angles about our history. And I actually ultimately felt very empowered. But there was this conversation and this criticism that we were uplifting this African tribe who sold Africans, right? Into the transatlantic slave trade. And it really left me thinking that we are having a really hard time because in our history in the United States, we haven't been great about taking accountability and repairing versus blaming, right? And so nobody really wants to hold accountability and hold the space for this is how I hurt you. These are the issues, and how can we move forward and repair that? And I think that goes for our own people with us as well, as I think in most cultures, like taking accountability. But the reason is because then people start to blame. It's like, well, see, we're not so bad because look at you guys. And so people are afraid to take accountability for their own part in things because it always goes this way, like it goes down and then nothing ever happens. So I think just acknowledging that that conversation needs to be had and that we need to repair some things and we need to take accountability without meaning that other people don't take accountability and without meaning that we're the bad guys and without meaning that other harms haven't been done. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And it goes to the point of, yeah, corrective action is necessary. Whatever you do, whatever corrective action you feel is appropriate. And perhaps in this case, the firing was because of the historical aspect to it, and the multiple complaints. Yeah, it sounds like firing was warranted. The question is, what happens to the system that didn't fire if there were multiple complaints to begin with? So in terms of accountability, I think you're absolutely right. I think we need to show Black women that we value you. We value your experience. And so if there are people who are skin folks, who are not kin folks, because of how they're treating you, they got to go too. Now, granted, we need to still do some work there because that can be an underlying psychological issue in terms of, oh, there's so many layers there. Why we're like that? Like, I'm like, do I even want to go there and touch that topic? Mm-hmm. But we're not. Listen, I know I'm like, leave that part alone because I may dig myself into a place and have to call up one of the psychotherapists to come help me dig myself out. But we can't ignore them either, right? We can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I hate that analogy, but you know what I mean. But we do have to correct the action, but still not forget them, because perhaps this is, and I'm not excusing it, so don't come for me, y'all. Don't write me, don't text me. Listen, I'm just saying, trying to think about it from the depth of it, right? So how did those nurses end up there? It could be systemic, but it's systemic in terms of the healthcare, but it also could be systemic in terms of our socioeconomic issues in our history in this country. Why are they like this? Did they endure their own trauma? Did it become callous as a result of their ongoing experience in America? So addressing and being accountable on both levels, I think, to your point, Olivia, I think we are to be accountable within the healthcare system and be intolerant of certain behaviors. But then we also, as a community, are responsible to figure out, okay, why are you so dysfunctional? You know, what's the issue, the underlying issue that we have to deal with? What do you other ladies think in terms of how do we even address this? What do you think as a mom, Bree? I mean, you've been through the system, you've had your experiences. What would you like to see happen?
Um, I mean, I would like for the whole experience. I don't care if you're having a baby or not, be better at the hospital because you could just be going for a regular checkup. And our let's say emergency. If you go to the emergency, it takes a long time for you as a Black person to be seen. And as far as pain goes, when you say you're in pain as a Black person, that's I remember I went to the emergency and the lady said, I'm in pain. Where's your pain level at? I said an 8 going to a 9. She never asked me, do you want any meds? Never, not once. Do you want meds? And I'm a person that don't like take meds. I take turmeric for pain most of the time, or mint for pain. I was in a lot of pain and and out of the whole day, I just took the pain and the spirit spoke to me and said, advocate for yourself. You have to speak up. But I just think that those systems weren't meant for us to be treated. I think the hospitals and those, establishments weren't designed to take care of people of color. And so when people of color goes to work in those establishments, they get used to that same, I guess, how that system was built in the first place. And instead of being the change that they want to see, they just adapt to it and they give that same treatment to people that look like them. So honestly, I don't know what can be done because we can hire more nurses and more doctors, which is needed in those fields. But as far as just being a kind person, that should just be given.
A human characteristic, right? It should be given. Kindness should be given. Oh my gosh. Ooh, y'all on come. I feel like I need a part 2 of this conversation, but I know y'all got lives and y'all got things to do. But y'all keep bringing up some topics. But when you said that this system wasn't built for us, it wasn't. We weren't even made a part of the system until way after emancipation, like not even considered, right?
It was built on us.
Right.
Not exactly. So you're 100% right. And I will say disappointing for me within the system is the fact that I don't even think the system realizes that Black women are like, there's a mass exodus. Like, okay, you see the exodus in the Bible? Like, they ain't got nothing on the Black women who are leaving the healthcare system. There's a mass exodus out the healthcare system, okay? Especially maternal healthcare. And when things like this happen, who can blame them, right? They're basically trying to figure out, how do I survive? How do I survive? And how do I make sure that my baby survives? And it's sad to me because I feel like although this statistic came out, and by the way, the statistic has been known for decades, I've been looking at these stats for a long time, traveling to other countries and comparing this data. We acting like this is new. This is not new. It's never been good for any woman in the US. It's never been good. So this is not new, but I feel like, why are we so slow to respond as a system? Like, what major changes have you guys noticed the healthcare system do in response to these stats?
I know insurance companies are starting to work and invest quite a bit of money in doula programs and supporting things like that. There's been quite a few pieces of legislation and policy of people really trying to champion some things as far as educating people from
Omnibus. Shout out to Omnibus.
Yeah, like there's a lot, the Mama's First Act. There have been things, but our system is slow. I mean, for anything, right? Even just for our government to work. So, and women's health, I mean, we're talking about women as a whole. We've been fighting for rights of second-class citizens forever, all around the world. And then don't talk about color. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's deep.
Look at our women in Iran. I mean, point blank, right? 2023. But you're right. When you put it in that context, Olivia, okay, you're like, well, look at our rights to begin with. Look at the fact what happened with the Supreme Court. I guess you have, and if women as a whole can't get rights, then certainly Black women are considered to be the bottom of the barrel. So we're definitely the last to experience any type of change. But to your point, yes, there are states that are trying to include doula services and reimburse for doula services, though we still gonna need to work on that number that they're reimbursing as so that people are motivated to do it. But there's still only 15 states that even consider or are considering including in the Medicaid program. Out of
Let's not even talk about midwives. Let's not even talk about midwives.
Listen, no, I want you to talk about midwives. Let the people know.
I mean, okay, so there are different kinds of midwives. Certified nurse midwives are recognized in every state, but they're legislated differently, right? Licensed or professional midwives are outlawed in some states, so them just serving their community is literally a crime. They risk their lives. And there's been a lot of movement about birth workers, and I feel this, and I know I'm biased, but I feel like people understand what a doula is. They have all these things, lactation consultants, and I think midwifery has really been lost in that, and a lot of that stems from midwifery, right? It's this care that is literally the oldest profession in the world. Nevertheless, there aren't as many of us, and there are a lot of barriers there, but there are a lot of organizations that are working really hard to kind of try to take down those barriers so that midwifery and women's health can be given back to the women who started it, to the hands of the people, right? Because studies show that we take care of our community. If you get care from people who look like you, right? From people who even understand a little bit your walk of life, you have a better chance of just overall not being traumatized, whether that's primary care, whether that's birth, whether that's anything. So,
newborns.
It just, we need to be taken care of by our people. And that goes for everybody. It really is across the board. It's just that we haven't all been represented equally across the board.
Yeah. And I do think it's really discouraging. I'm blanking on her name, and y'all forgive me for blanking on her name. But I think also when women of color see healthcare professionals also die, and there are a couple of examples last year, and y'all forgive me for blanking on their names. I try to remember their names, but it's a long day. It's been a long day. But the one that died as a result of COVID, who was a physician who tried to tell them that she was sick and she was not well, and they didn't believe her. The pediatrician that died as a result of childbirth. We will not forget about, even though I'm blanking on the names, we're not, and I'm going to put the names below. We're not forgetting who they are. But I think especially when you see the impact, and I have my own story I've shared periodically. So I think when you even see those of us who are in the system have these negative experiences, it's really hard to convince other women who look like us to trust the system. How could we? The system didn't even do us well. So I hate to end on such that.
I mean, I went to a different country.
Listen, you would have packed up. That's how done she is as a midwife in America. She really was like,
just for now. I'll make my way back.
I'm packing my family up and we are moving to a different country. That's how done she is with the system. Okay. And she's an amazing midwife. So y'all are lost big time. But it just goes to show. And I think, when I see a woman of color come in, especially a Black woman into the office, I definitely have to deal with the layers of trauma first. I can't even get to her medical condition until I deal with her mindset, until she feels like she could trust me. And when I have to give bad news, oh my gosh, how hard is it to say, hey, you're diagnosed with X, Y, and Z? Because then now it's, here goes that system again, right? And now what's going to happen to me if I'm sick? Now I have an illness, which increases my likelihood of not having good outcome. How do I trust the system to make sure that I have a good outcome? It's Amanda, we need some positive light, good news.
I wish I had some to give.
What would you say as a aspiring obstetrician? Notice I keep saying that. I'm going to keep speaking it until it happens. What would you say, how has this shaped your approach to patients?
I was going to actually say this earlier. I definitely feel like I like to approach patients as if they're my brother or sister, or my mom or dad, or my grandma or grandpa. Like, would I treat that patient? Like, how would I want them to be treated is how I want to treat my patient. Obviously, with that not being too close of a relationship, but I mean, would I want my mom to have care of course I'd want her to have the best care. So I'm going to treat this patient as if they were my mom and giving them the best care possible. And I think a lot of the nurses from this video kind of forgot that. Like, if that was your sister giving birth, would you want their nurse to be talking about your sister in that way behind their back? Would you trust that nurse to be helping your sister give birth? And probably not. And it was funny because I actually asked my significant other his opinion on this video. And at first he wasn't like very phased by it. He was like, "Oh, I don't see anything wrong with it." And then I said, "Well, what if I was giving birth and that was my nurse saying that, like delivering our child? How would you feel?" And he's like, "Oh, I would definitely not want them as my nurse or your nurse taking care of you. And I would definitely want a different nurse." And I'm like, "So you have to remember that these nurses are giving care to these patients, and then those patients also expect a certain level of care and treatment, and they're being basically disrespected behind their back. And I don't think that that's how I'd want to treat my patients or how my patients would expect me to treat them either."
That's a good point. That's
Yeah.
a beautiful point. And I'm going to wrap up on that topic because
That's a good place to wrap.
that's
You
a
know where
good
we're
place to
going.
wrap, right? Like she got my head scratching. Like, girl, you are so right. I mean, and I'm gonna say one more extra line on that because you touched on a memory on something that Olivia said before, and I'm gonna echo it. She probably doesn't even remember that she said this, but to your point, I think we've lost the ceremonial aspect of birth. You remember saying that, Olivia? And I think if we keep in mind that the power and the beauty of bringing life into this world, and if we truly treat birth as a ceremony, as a passageway, I think we've become callous to what birth is. And I think if we remind ourselves of the miracle of birth, that we will have the right mindset. So I'm going to end on that.
All you caring,
Thank you both for reminding me of that point.
All these caring clinicians in the room. That's what we need. We just need caring
We just gonna
clinicians.
clone us. We're just gonna clone us, but it's always an amazing opportunity. We can, like, there's so many layers we haven't even touched with this topic, but we're gonna wrap it up here. I just appreciate you ladies for coming on this couch. This was a really critical topic to me, and I only wanted to discuss it with people who I think can handle the sensitivity of this topic really well. So thank you for joining us on the couch. Now, if people wanted to follow you, or if you want to share a way that they can follow you, if not, it's okay. If you want to stay private, because we know some of y'all got some private accounts. But if they do want to follow you, share how they can follow you.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at This American Midwife.
All right. And don't get jealous because she got a whole lot of sunshine and beaches in her background. Bree, how can they follow you if they wanted to follow you and also buy your children's book? Let's remember that. Okay.
You can buy my children's book on Amazon, and you can follow me, Bree Singer One, on Instagram.
Awesome, awesome. And Dr. Trista, the other Dr. T, how can they follow you?
At tristajob.dpt on Instagram.
Yeah, she remembers. It's a new, yeah, honey. It's a new year. Amanda, how can they follow you?
They can follow me on Instagram. It's Amanda AAYUMN.
Listen, Tristan, you got company. Amanda is just like you. You got company. And I am Dr. T, always the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bump Club. You can see us on Instagram where we share all of our quick tip health topic ideas and information that you deserve to know. And when you're done there, just make sure you continue to hang out with us right here on YouTube. If you're done with this video and you like what we had to say, go ahead and check out some of our other videos. Check out the one with Bree. She shared a whole lot of deep information. You're going to want to definitely watch that video. Hit up the one with Olivia helped us understand what's a doula, what's a midwife, because some of y'all are getting those two a little bit confused and they are very different. So make sure you understand what's a midwife and what's a doula, because she laid down the facts in one of our other videos. So we're going to tag those videos to this particular video. And as always, thank you guys for purchasing our gear, our apparel. That's how we get all these things done, our community services. We thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in next episode.